Regain control over your business by building a change management system using SharePoint. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a change register that also has a change impact assessment form built into it and displaying it nicely within a SharePoint site. My name's Dougie Wood and I'm a Microsoft MVP. I've been helping businesses all over the world build solutions just like this. So if you need professional support with SharePoint, there's a link in the description below to contact me.
So the scenario that I'm going to be building this change control register in is actually part of my QMS quality management system that I'm building out in SharePoint, which is essentially a set of building blocks for everything you need for, say, something like ISO 9001, which includes things like audits, so tracking audits, non-conformance registers, investigation logs and root causes of non-conformances, as well as subsequent corrective and preventive actions, a risk register and managing risks, as well as supplier management, and also a CRM system, which allows you to kind of keep track of things like complaints and things like that, which might come from customers and so forth. So the next thing we're going to be kind of looking at is then building out a change control register. So the first thing that I want to do is actually create a new SharePoint list. So on my site, I'm going to site contents, which is where all the lists and libraries for my SharePoint QMS live. I'm then going to click on new and then list. And what I'm then going to be doing is I want to create a brand new list. And this is going to be my change control register. There we go. Now, this basically is going to be the master list that captures every change request and its overall status of where it's up to. Basically, its purpose is to be a central log of all requests, everything that's been requested for every change log that's been requested or any approved changes. I'm also going to be creating a change impact assessment form, which will be linked to a specific change control register, but potentially you could have multiple change impact assessments per change control. So we're going to do that. And I'm also going to be looking at how we can have an approval system that's linked into this as well. So the first field that I'm going to basically look at is a ID system. So we are going to need an ID that's part of our change control. So basically every change control form that gets submitted should have a unique identifier. Now in SharePoint, there's actually a default field which is just called ID. And it just means that everything that you create in this list, every form you submit into this list, it'll automatically generate its own ID. It's a unique ID against it. Then we're going to have a title. So basically this will just be like a short kind of thing to summarize what the change is. For example, like an update to welding procedure or something like that. Then we're going to have a change type. So for this, I'm going to use a choice field and I'm going to call my field change type. This is then, as I say, it could be anything we put in here, but typically it might be, say, things like documents, process, equipment. It could be training. It could be software. There's so many different things that it could be. It's totally up to you, completely configurable how you want this to work. So we change some of the colors and then click on save, and then we've got our field. We typically would want to document who has requested the change. So we're going to use a people field and we're going to call it requested by. Then we might want to document the department or the area that's going to be affected by this change. So for this, again, I'd probably choose a choice field for this, and we'll call it area or department affected. Now, the reason why I mention this is because what we will do is we'll also be using things like workflows to automate certain things. So when we specify the department which is affected, we would likely have a workflow that will basically look at this field and determine who the approval process will go to based on department. So although I'm not necessarily going to show you this in this demonstration as a full-fledged solution, that's the sort of thing that we would build as part of a change control register. If you are interested in a full kind of system, we do offer sort of consultations, and we can deploy a system like this for you. There's a link in the description below to book in a free consultation to talk about how we can help deploy this for you. But typically those areas might be things like production, it might be quality, it might be maintenance. If I can spell maintenance. But again, you could add all sorts of different things in here, different departments and areas that might be impacted by said change. We want a description, so we're going to use multiple lines of text, and within here we are going to put the change description, like so. I feel like that's spelt wrong, but no, it's okay. Then we're going to look at the reason for the change. So again, this could be all sorts of different things. So we're going to leave it as a multiple lines of text to allow that person essentially to give their own kind of reasoning for that change. We are going to put a priority on this. So we're going to use the choice field, and we are going to create a field called priority. Now, how and when this gets selected, I guess, would be down to your process and how you feel this kind of fits into things. It might be that it's part of the approval process that it gets selected of like how much of a priority this actually is. I think allowing the person who's submitting it potentially to define that may cause some problems. Because obviously everyone's going to think their thing that they're requesting is high priority. So let's put in a couple of different colors like so. Then we've got our priority. So we can have the date raised. Now we can do that in two ways. So we could either manually get someone to submit the date that they're raising it through a field on the form, which is fine. And that would work quite well if, say, for example, the request was come through via an email and you haven't quite logged it for a couple of days and you wanted to sort of backfill the date. That's the way you would do it. However, there is two system fields, one called created, one called created by, which basically means whenever you create an item in the SharePoint list, it will automatically date and timestamp when it was created, but also who created it. So if we're going off the date and time and the person that created the SharePoint list item, it's fine to use these two fields because, again, I always try and make it as simple as possible to fill out these forms and make it short as possible. So then we've got our date raised, we've got who actually raised it. We are probably going to look for a status field next. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enable a very basic approval process. Now, this actually isn't going to generate any emails or anything like that. It's purely just the it's basically what will give you the framework to allow for an approval process to take place. So I'm just going to turn on require content approval for submitted items. I'm going to say yes, and then who should see draft items. It doesn't really matter. None of those really pieces drastically matter at this stage. I'm just turning on the approval so that we get an additional field added called approval status. It will also create a couple of views. So we've also got approve rejected items, and it's got my submissions as well that it automatically adds in there. So it will filter the data in a couple of different ways as well. And I'll show you this working in a moment. It's very basic. There's no workflows. Again, typically when we deploy this for our customers, we would also pin on the back of it some Power Automate workflows where the approval process is actually being emailed to somebody or being sent via Microsoft Teams. So it can be approved potentially outside the system, or at least bringing them back into the system so they're aware the approval is taking place, rather than manually having to come into the system and check to see if there's something that they need to approve or not. We would likely also add in things like the implementation date. Now, to keep this simple, I'm just going to have one field called implementation date. I have seen people want to have more fields in this in terms of like what the planned implementation date is or the requested date and then what the actual date is. But for now, I'm just going to put in implementation date as one field. Typically as well, you would have some kind of effectiveness review outcome as well. So this is basically after it's been reviewed, any notes and things like that. But again, you can put notes just against the record, the list item itself. So I'll show you the notes field and how that works in a moment as well. Now, to add a new items, really simple. We just click on add new item and you can see the form appears like this. So all we need to do is then start populating this form. So for example, the title would likely be something like this. We might put update to quality policy statement. The change type would be document, as a change of a document. Who it's requested by. Now, as I say, this might be the person who created the item, but it might be that I've basically creating it on behalf of someone else, which is quite often the case that I see someone else controlling this isn't necessarily the person who's requesting it. So I might just type into here to say that it's been requested by George, for example. The department that's affected will be, say, quality. The change description is going to be a longer piece of text. So this essentially is just going to tell us what the revised quality policy statement to align with the new corporate sustainability goals and any other additional notes. The reason for the change, in fact, I've accidentally just pasted that into the wrong area. I'm just going to paste this down. So reason for change, management review outcome. The priority is set to medium. And again, I say workflows could potentially then automatically look at this and then set the implementation date automatically based on, for example, if it was low, it might be months. If it was medium, it might be weeks, or if it's high, it might be a matter of days. So we can automate that as well. But in this case, I'm going to say that we're going to look to implement this, say, by the end of December, as an example. We can add any attachments. Now, the attachments are not links. They are actually physically copies that are attached to this SharePoint list item. So if say, for example, the documents live in the document control. So if you watch one of my previous videos about how to build a document control system, like a DMS type of thing, you might have your documents stored in SharePoint already. And you could link to them either by providing hyperlink fields within here, or the other cool thing you can do is you can make these, say, description boxes, rich HTML type boxes, so you can actually insert hyperlinks, so you could put in links to specific documents if you wanted to as well. Then just by clicking save, you can see it's then created me my record. It's automatically put it into pending approval status, and you can see actually as a little quick win, we can actually go and look at the approval system inside of here. So typically, I'd say we'd build something a little bit more fancy than this, but you can just have an approved or rejected buttons inside of SharePoint as well. I'm just actually going to pause the video for a second and create a few more items in the change control register, just to pad it out, just so it's a little bit more obvious of what we're actually looking at. If you're interested in this system, then we do deploy it at a fixed price to our customers. Get in touch for a free demo using the link in the description below. Actually looking at. So there we go, we've got some data now in our change control register, just so we can play around a little bit with this. So you can see we can then filter by, say, change type. So we could look at everything that was maybe process related, filter that, and then we can see the changes that we're suggesting to process areas. Maybe we could have a little look at priority. So maybe we just wanted to take a look at the high priority stuff. We can filter it in multiple different ways. We can add multiple filters over them if we wanted to. So let's say, for example, we're interested in process and we're interested in who it is requested by. We can filter this down to find specific items. Now, I know there's only a handful of items in here at the moment, but you can see what I mean in that way. We can also see items which are by kind of their status. So ones which are pending, ones which have been approved, so we can see that split. We can see my submissions, which looks exactly the same because I've submitted all of them, but essentially that would look different depending on who's actually submitted them. So every user's view of that would look slightly different. So we've got our change control register now. The second thing that we want to do is actually create a change impact assessment. So the change impact assessment is essentially somewhere where once you have submitted your change control register item, then the impact assessment is for evaluating the effect of the change before the approval takes place. So what we're going to do is go and create a separate SharePoint list. The reason why we're doing that is so that we can separate it, and potentially there might be multiple change impact assessments which need to take place as like separate records before actually the approval takes place. So we're going to click on new, we're going to click on list, and then we're going to create a brand new blank list. So we're going to create a list, and then we're going to call this a change impact assessment. So this is our change impact assessment form. And what we're going to do is start off by making sure that there is a unique ID. But again, we can use the default ID field, which comes with our SharePoint list. All we need to just do is put it to the front of the queue, just at the front of our view. And there we go. We've got our ID, we've got our title. What we then will likely want to do is put who is actually going to be the assessor. So maybe we would call this assessed by. Again, it's a people field that we'll be selecting someone from. Then what we would be looking to do is have the date and time assessed. You can include the time if you want to, you don't have to. Then you click on save. We will then look at the process impact. So I would typically use a choice field for this. And the options would likely be something like none, as in there's no impact, minor impact, major impact, and I would typically pick some colors, obviously, that reflects that as well. So hopefully, there we go. So we click on save, and that's then created us our process impact field. I might just need to I've actually got way too many tabs open. I think it's starting to slow down. So I'm just going to refresh my page after I've closed a few of these tabs. There we go. So we've got process impact now. Now we want to think about training impact. So is this going to impact training in any way, shape or form? So I'm going to use a yes, no field for this because it'll either impact training or it won't. So by default, I'm going to select no because you have to pick a default, unfortunately, with a yes, no field. So I'm going to pick no, but obviously people can change that to yes if they feel there is going to be a training impact. Next would be equipment or IT impact. Again, I'm just going to go with the yes, no field here. Equipment or IT impact. Again, just going to go with no with this, just to make it as quick and speedy as possible for whoever's filling out this form to actually complete it. Then what I would usually do is have some form of, say, customer impact. So yes or no. Are customers going to be impacted in any way, shape or form? Yes or no. Risk assessment summary. So you could do one of two things here. You could, for example, just have a text field. So you might go with multiple lines of text, which I'm going to do in this case. Or you could link to something that's in the risk register. So if there was a risk that needed to be logged, you could link it to the risk register. But I'm just going to put this as risk assessment as multiple lines of text. So it's a risk assessment summary, I guess, is the point there. And then any recommended actions. So again, this would typically link to the corrective and preventative actions at the top up there as well, if you wanted to actually document it in a little bit more detail. But this is more just like a little summary area for us for our change impact assessment. The final thing, and I probably should have done this first, to be totally honest, but is to actually link this change impact assessment to the change control register. Now, how we do this is with a lookup column, and I'm going to call this the change register ID. Then what I'm going to do is look up the change control register. I'm going to pull through the ID of it. Now you could pull through the title if you wanted to, There's no harm, so we'll pull through the title as well, potentially, just so it's a little bit easier to understand. Then once we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move all that to the front, because I think that would actually look better being right at the top. So I'm just going to move these fields up a little bit. Same with the change register ID field as well, just because I think all the IDs are best to go near the beginning, just so it makes a little bit more sense. So that would be the ID, obviously, of the assessment, but we can see then at a glance what this actually relates to quite quickly. Cool, so we've got a change impact assessment now. All we need to do is then create some data in this. So I'm just going to pause the video as I create some new items in here. Okay, so we've got some data now, and you can see actually now the change impact assessments, they link back to the original change register. So you just by clicking on the ID, it'll take you back to the full item. So we can see here, this is to update the quality policy statement, and we can see the full change request here. Then we can see the change impact assessment back on this page. So we can see basically revision of supplier approval criteria. We can put our own titles in here if it was going to be slightly different for the change impact assessment compared to the title that we're pulling through from the form. We've got the ID of the change impact assessment, who's assessed by, the date assessed, the process impact, and so forth. Again, we can automate some of this. So if we knew, say for example, training was going to be impacted, we might automatically send an email to our training or learning development department, say, hey, the training is going to need to be updated. If we know it's going to update, it's going to impact our equipment or the IT, again, an email maybe is sent to IT. And if it's customer impact, maybe it's sent to our customer success team, our sales team, to let them know of how this is going to be impacting them. So the final thing that we're going to do is just quickly put together a change page. So essentially, and ignore the homepage for the QMS at the moment. I am going to, once I've created all these different elements, put together a very nice homepage for the QMS. So look out for a future video on that, on the creation of the homepage for a QMS. However, I'm going to create a brand new page, a blank page, and I'm going to call this our change management system. And what I'm going to do is actually just change this header just to make it plain, just get it out of the way for now, and turn the comments of the page off. Then what I'm going to do is actually have, I think we're going to have a column on top of a column, to be honest, but let's have a look. So what I'm going to do is display two lists. I'm going to display our changes wherever that list is. Change impact and change control. So we need the change control register, and we will need the second list, which will be our change impact assessments. So what I'm going to do is actually, do you know what? I don't think we need to see all this information on one page. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create some cut down versions so we can jump directly into them. We can have everything all on one page without any scrolling. So what I'm going to do is jump back to the change control register. And within here, I'm going to create a new view. So what I'm going to do is on this drop down and say save view as, I'm going to call this or let's call it summary for now. Summary view makes more sense. So I think we only are going to need a few of these fields. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose to show and hide a few fields. So I think maybe we don't need the change type or requested by or any of these other fields. I don't think at a high level. Maybe the priority, maybe the approval status. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So that's cut us down quite significantly, like so. Then what we're going to do is make sure this is saved for a start. Then I'm going to go back to that page we were on a second ago. I'm just going to see if we can try and get it all onto one page, ideally. So what I need to do is I'm going to change the view of this to our summary view, which will cut it right down. Then I'm going to change this section into a 2-column section. Bear with me, see where we go with this, but I'm hoping I can then get all this on one page so that our change control register will act as a filter for the change impact assessments. So again, I think we need to cut this down, because remember as well, you can just click on the title and you can see the full form. So by hiding those fields in this kind of view doesn't really matter, to be totally honest, because you'll see, I mean, for example, I think we probably need to change on the summary view, even just hide that, I think. Or yeah, I always say it's up to you how you do this, but I'm going to hide the priority column and we'll have it like this. And then we're going to go back, and I need to do a cut down summary version view of our other area, our assessments. So let me just refresh this and see what this looks like. So there we go. So that's now actually all on one page. If we now do the same thing, oops. If we now do the same thing for the change impact assessment, I think we just need to cut this right down. Save view as, and this is going to be our summary view. Again, we just don't need all of this. So let's get rid of all this. We don't need the change first ID. I think we do need the impact assessment ID, the title. Probably don't need who it's assessed by or any of these other details. That's probably fine, actually. So let's have a look at that. So, brilliant. Let's now go back. And let's go back a step one more. Go to our change management page. Now, let's change this view to our summary view. There we go. It's looking good. It's looking good. Right. Let's republish. See what this looks like. Right. So now we've got a change control register. We've got a change impact assessments all on one page. Now what we want to do is be able to filter the change impact assessment by the selected change control register item. So what we're going to do is edit the properties of this, select dynamic, and we're going to select on ID. And we're going to select on change control, and we're going to select on ID again, click on apply, and then hopefully with a little bit of luck, when we select update quality policy statement, we can automatically then see the change impact assessment is filtered to show us the impact assessment for that change control register item. Now, I'd be tempted to go one step further with this, in terms of I would probably have 2 areas. So I would probably have, at the very top up here, I'd probably just want to see the ones which are not approved yet. So the ones which are basically just still pending. And then we can see where these are up to. And maybe even have the status field here next to it. Basically, just because I highlight once you get more into this list, you're not really going to care about the ones which have been approved at a glance. You want to quickly see the ones which are pending approval and quickly get to the impact assessments which relate to it. So we could update our summary view to basically exclude the approval status. So what I'm going to do is filter by and say it has to be basically something which is pending to show in this view. So I'm going to save that view again. I'm going to go back eventually here, and now you can see only pending ones. So you're only going to see the ones which are pending. You're not going to see anything else which is not pending. And that's it. So this is how we built our change management system. I would probably also just add a link to this page straight to the navigation bar. I am going to tidy this up afterwards. There's far too much going on across up the top up here, but it just means then I can jump directly, say from my CRM section directly into my change management section, and I can see what's important to me straight away. If I wanted to see all the items, of course, I could just click on see all, and that's going to jump me directly into here. I can click on all items, and I can see all items with all those different fields at play as well. If you enjoyed that video, please do subscribe. Also, continue to watch me build out a QMS in SharePoint by clicking on the video on the screen now. See you there.